So this could be a potentially polarizing video like my last one about the Batmobile, which got 5 likes and 5 dislikes. And the topic at hand is my thoughts on DC's more scattershot policy with their various movies and TV shows. Now, as we all know, Marvel Studios has pretty much made a big name for themselves by tying in different franchises like the Captain America franchise, the Iron Man franchise, the Thor franchises into a big mega franchise, which is the Avengers one, of course. And now they're building it up with various TV shows. We got Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coming up, which got pretty good in the later half of the season once the Winter Soldier stuff went down, and then we have the upcoming Daredevil series in May of 2015, for which I'm pretty excited for myself. And all this different stuff is in the same continuity as Iron Man. They all happen in the same universe. They share the same history. Things that happen in Avengers are probably going to be referenced in the Daredevil show and that kind of stuff. I'm almost 100% certain that's going to happen. And Marvel has made pretty much a big name for themselves because of this, so much so that other studios are building their own cinematic universes. And, we have the X-Men, building up other movies. We know there's going to be an Apocalypse movie. There's going to be an X-Force film, which is currently on hold. We know there's probably going to be a Gambit spin-off if Channing Tatum is well-received as Gambit, and probably other spin-offs for other teams and or characters. And then we know Sony is doing their own big Spider-Man universe, which is kind of in a shaky footing right now after the polarizing reception of Amazing Spider-Man 2 and its not great box office return in comparison to the other films of the franchise. But DC is doing something different. DC isn't trying to tie in everything into the same continuity. From the looks of it, it seems that a lot of these different properties are going to be in their own universe, and this has become a big point of contention for people that are saying that this is why DC is failing. They're not tying in everything into the same continuity. The Constantine show is not canon to the Justice League Dark film that's still in production, apparently. The Supergirl show apparently won't be connected to the Man of Steel universe. That there's a big whole point of contention where people are saying, Arrow and Flash in particular should be canon to Man of Steel. And I used to be one of those people myself as well. In fact, I'm thinking of even doing a fanfic where we're gonna try and make Nolan's Batman, Snyder's Man of Steel, and the CW's Arrow and Flash in the same continuity. That should be pretty interesting. But anyway, personally, I really don't mind this. Because, personally, I think that a lot of people are putting continuity ahead of quality. Now, personally, when I think of quality, I think of how is this action scene directed? How is this actor's performance in this scene? How is the dialogue? Does it feel natural? Does it feel stilted? Does the actor give a shit? How is the score? How is the storyline? Does the plot make logical sense and that kind of stuff? Basically, those are kind of the things that determine the quality of a product for me. Personally, when I watch an adaptation of a comic book and that kind of shit, I really don't care whether or not it changes the source material. It's an alternate universe. It doesn't have the same backstory as the comics. It doesn't clearly follow the same rules as the comics, so it should be judged on its own merits, and that's pretty much my opinion for every single adaptation out there. Now, if a film is actively trying to stay pretty damn close to a certain story, then I think you can, and then I think it is kind of fair to draw comparisons between that and the source material. For example, the Dark Knight Returns film, which stays pretty damn close to the comic book. Some things are added in. The monologuing is cut out, which I think is better. And so I think in that kind of situation, I guess it's fair to draw comparisons. But for everything else, it seems wildly different for most of the time, and I really don't mind it. And one of the things that a lot of comic book fans put ahead of quality is, faithfulness to source material, but then there's this other thing that's being put ahead of quality, and that's continuity. Everyone has this whole big continuity boner. Like, when the Netflix shows were announced, everyone was like, oh, is this going to be canon to Man of Steel? Like, what's the deal? Not Man of Steel. Is it going to be canon to the Marvel Cinematic Universe? And then everyone was like, arguing and that kind of stuff, wondering whether it is, whether it wasn't. And then when it was announced that, yes, the Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Defender shows, those are all going to be canon to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and everyone got a big ol', what I like to call, continuity boner. Now, DC is pretty different from Marvel even in the comic books, it's pretty different. And I think it's really fascinating how the adaptations are mimicking the statuses of their source material, and I'm going to get to that later on. DC was made scattershot. DC wasn't made by, like, a couple of guys like the Marvel Universe was. You didn't have, like, a DC Stan Lee and Jack Kirby reimagining Thor, Captain America, creating Iron Man, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, all these different characters. They weren't made by, like, this small group of people together. They were made by different people at different points in history, and the DC Universe is pretty much a patchwork, you know. Superman exists in the same continuity as Batman, which is pretty weird if you really think about it. And they're different characters made by different people at different points in history that all exist in the same continuity. And they're never going to completely fit together, even in the comic books. Even if you got a couple of guys to completely reimagine the entire DC universe, there's still going to be this kind of inherent weirdness because these guys were not made by the same people, and there is this kind of disparity between them. But DC has made it work in the comic books for decades now, and people don't really seem to mind this as much. And people then tend to forget this. But my whole big spiel is basically saying that if there is a comic book company out there that can get away with having various different universes exist, it's DC. Not just because of this kind of disjointed feeling of their characters, but also because of the multiverse. The way I see it is that the Man of Steel universe, which has Man of Steel, the upcoming Justice League film, and Batman vs. Superman, that is Earth Prime. That is the main universe. That is the core of all DC-related things. And then the various other live-action adaptations are just either standalone universes or alternate Earths. Like a lot of people are saying that the Arrow Flash universe is basically Earth 2. Like, Earth 1 is Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and then Earth 2 is Arrow, The Flash, a possible Suicide Squad thing, and all that other kind of stuff. And then, you know, Sandman is his own standalone character, Constantine is his own standalone character, and that kind of stuff. And I think you can really do that with DC, because DC is pretty famous for its Elseworlds and multiverse storylines. Like, some of the best DC storylines in its history are alternate universes. You know, The Dark Knight Returns, alternate universe. Watchmen, alternate universe. All-Star Superman, alternate universe. Superman Red Sun, also alternate universe. And I think the DC can really kind of do that. And I think it's really fascinating that they are sort of mirroring the style that has been used in DC Comics. And this is kind of what's going on with all the other adaptations. You know, Marvel is made by this, like, really small group that's controlling everything. They have a hand in everything. They're micromanaging everything. They have everything under control, just like how Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and those guys had in the 60s with the Marvel Comics. And then you have X-Men continuity in the films, which is a complete fucking mess. And it's exactly, and the situation, the comic books, is exactly the same. You know, X-Men continuity is a fucking mess in the movies and in the comics. It's really, really weird. And then Spider-Man sucks now, and he sucks in the movies. Like, it's just really, really weird how these adaptations are mirroring their sort of continuities and the mentalities that were used to build their said continuities, just like the comics did. And I think that's really, really fascinating, and no one seems to really talk about that. But as for my thoughts for the shows themselves, as you know, I'm a big fan of Arrow. I really, really like Arrow. I thought the second season was pretty fucking awesome. It did lose its track later on. I watched the Flash pilot. I, of course, downloaded it. Sorry. I will review it when it officially comes out, because I don't want to get into trouble with any potential lawyers and that kind of crap. And I thought it was pretty damn good. It started off kind of but by the end, I really, really dug it. I haven't seen Gotham. I'm really not interested in Gotham. I would have just preferred a straight-up Batman show or something along those lines. I really just don't give a flying fuck about Gotham. I watched the Constantine pilot. I thought that was pretty damn good, too. And yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts for the shows thus far. And now, as for the shows that are coming up, Greg Berlanti, a guy who is involved with Arrow and The Flash, he basically said that that he's making a Supergirl show, and he's throwing it out to different networks. I would really, really like this if Supergirl was in the CW universe as Flash and Arrow. Because the way the CW universe is working right now is that Arrow is their Batman. He's like the darker vigilante who, fights the lower-level thugs and criminals and mafia kinds of guys. And Flash is their Superman, the big, bright, public figure who smiles and he helps people in broad daylight and that kind of stuff. And I think that with Supergirl, they could have a Wonder Woman type figure, and I think it would be really fascinating. And I think you could really easily do Supergirl without having Superman in it, because Supergirl and Superman have the exact same origin. The only difference is that Kara, she was a teenager when Krypton and her whole civilization was destroyed, and then she drifted off into space for a couple of decades, and then she came to Earth. I think you could really easily change it so that Kara is the only survivor of Krypton. And you could really do some very interesting things with that. You could even make her the Wonder Woman to Arrow's Batman and Flash's Superman, and I think it could really, really work. The only problem is that the budget. I think you could do stuff like heat vision, bulletproof skin, super strength, super speed, and all that kind of stuff very well. The flying might be a problem. But if DC is really supporting the CW universe and is giving them like a bigger budget, I think it can really, really work. And honestly, I would love it if Supergirl was the Wonder Woman to the CW universe's Batman, aka Arrow, or Superman, aka the Flash. And I think it could really work. I think you could do a lot of cool stuff with having Supergirl be the last daughter of Krypton, like the only Kryptonian left in all of the universe. And I think that could be a really, really good show. Please, to God, it better not be like Smallville. I fucking hate Smallville. They better not just do Smallville with Supergirl. That would suck major ass. As for the Titans show, in all honesty, I'm not a big fan of the Titans. I really don't get the appeal of most teenage superheroes. Like, I like the new Miss Marvel, even though I don't like the main artist of the book. I like the guy who did the Wolverine team-up issues. I thought that art style was leaps and bounds better than the main artist. But anyway, going back to the Titans show, I'm not a big Titans fan. I watched some of the episodes of the animated series, which was really, really popular and still is to this day. And I thought that was a pretty good show, but it's not really my cup of tea. I think that the show has a big problem between trying to be serious and funny at the same time. It doesn't really work, in my opinion. But I think that having Nightwing lead a team of Starfire, Raven, Beast Boy, and that kind of stuff, I think it could really, really work. And I think on TNT they could get at least a pretty decent budget to do that kind of stuff. Now, Beast Boy might be a bit difficult, but Starfire, she basically shoots fire, and Raven has like these shadow powers, I guess, and Dick Grayson, he's non-powered, and he really wouldn't be a problem. Now, if there was any one show that I think could be canon to the Batman versus Superman universe, it's this one, because the Batman in BVS, he's been around for, I think, a pretty long while, I think over 10 to 15 years. He's in his mid-40s, as one producer revealed, so I'm going to say he's been around for maybe almost 20 years at this point. So it's a pretty good conclusion to say that he's probably gone through several Robins at this point. He probably adopted Dick a while ago. Dick's probably been Nightwing for a while as well. Jason is probably dead at this point, and maybe even Tim also exists. So I think that with a Batman like that, who's already gone through several Robins and several partners, and he's been on the job for a long time, I think you could very easily tie it into the Batman versus Superman continuity without causing any kind of big problems. Now, if it's not canon to the show and they do it like how the animated series did it, where Batman exists but Nightwing doesn't want to mention him because they've just had a big falling out and they kind of hate each other, I think that could really, really work as well, and that's kind of what the animated series did too. And one of the big props of the Teen Titans is that people like Starfire and Raven and Beast Boy, they're not anybody's sidekicks. They are basically teenagers who became superheroes, and they don't have any mentors, they don't have any kind of, legacy to kind of uphold, I suppose. And with those kinds of characters, you don't have to ask the question of, well, where's Starfire's Batman? Where's Raven's Batman? Where are their mentors and that kind of stuff? And I think that could really, really work. Considering the fact that Arsenal is an Arrow, He probably won't be in this, and considering the fact that Wally's going to show up in the Flash show, he's also probably not going to be in this. So that's a bit of a bummer, I suppose, except I really, really fucking hate Wally. But yeah, I'm really excited for this kind of weird multiversal direction DC has taken with their different adaptations. I really hope the Supergirl one is in the CW universe, because I think they need a Wonder Woman type figure. And really, I'm going to really give these shows a proper chance. I'm not going to judge these shows based on how well they're interconnected with the films or some kind of shit. I'm not going to waste my time on that. I'm just going to sit down, watch the show, and I'm going to judge it on its own merits, and not on stupid shit like how well it can copy-paste the comics or how well it ties into Man of Steel. Oh yeah, and Shazam. Apparently Shazam is not canon to Man of Steel, because it's being made by New Line, which is a subsidiary of Warner Brothers. Now, for the moment, I think this is true. However, I think that if Shazam is received well, and it makes a lot of money, Warner Brothers is going to be like, bitch, we're making this canon to Man of Steel. You got no say in it. So yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. If the movie bombs, it bombs. You know, it's not going to affect the larger DC cinematic universe. And if it does well, then it's going to be brought into the Man of Steel universe. That's how I see it. That's probably what's going to happen. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty excited for the upcoming crop of DC adaptations. I think us DC fans, we might be kind of annoyed that we're still not going to get, you know, the Justice League film and all that kind of stuff for a long time now. But I think that the TV shows are going to be doing enough great stuff to keep us entertained once that comes, and then they're going to keep us entertained while we wait in between films. So yeah, I'm excited for this kind of stuff. I think great stuff is in store for us, and really, please guys, don't put continuity in front of quality. Calm your continuity boners down a bit, sit down on the show, and judge it on its own merits, not how well it can potentially cross over into other shit. Please.